everybody, and welcome to the inaugural webinar for Lumate Academy, which is the training and education pillar of Lumate Health. We are thrilled to have our two speakers today. We're going to talk to you about why connecting and communicating with your teen is so important, as well as how to begin those conversations, even when the topics aren't so easy. A quick note for our audience, we are going to have a Q&A at the end of this presentation, so please feel free to submit your questions in the chat room. As John and Anne-Marie are talking, I'm going to be monitoring that chat line, and we'll pull a handful of questions at the end to pose to John and Anne-Marie. Okay, so enough about the logistics. I'm going to introduce our speakers. John Trautwein is a former Major League Baseball player with the Red Sox, but today he's joining us as a father and founder of the Will to Live Foundation. He's here today to talk about how his family and his teammates guided him through a life-changing tragedy that resulted in the creation of the Will to Live Foundation in 2010. Will to Live is dedicated to working with teens and young adults to help them recognize the love, hope, and understanding they have in each other. John's Life Teammates message has been recognized by CNN, USA Today, Fox Sports, and Major League Baseball, among others. John and his wife Susie are also the recipients of the George W. Bush Presidential Point of Light Award for their work with Will to Live. And John, as I was reading and writing that, I was thinking to myself, damn, all right, that's impressive stuff. And no less impressive, Dr. Marie Albano is our trusted and beloved co-founder of Lumate Health. She's a professor of medical psychology and the director of Columbia University's Clinic for Anxiety and Related Disorders. She is a fellow of the American Psychological Association and the Association for Behavioral and Cognitive Therapies. She's a founding fellow of the Academy of Cognitive Therapy. This is a lot of words, important words to say. I'm just botching them. She's board certified in clinical child and adolescent psychology. She's also published over 200 articles and chapters with her colleagues and is the co-author of several cognitive behavioral treatment manuals. Anne-Marie is committed to empowering parents, and her approach is summarized in her 2020 TED Talk, How to Raise Kids Who Can Overcome Anxiety. So clearly, I need to stop talking. I'm going to turn the mic over to these two. Welcome, John and Anne-Marie.
Thank you, Sarah. It's great to be here.
And it's good to be here with you too, John. I'm excited that the three of us are doing this.
Yeah, this is a great opportunity to raise awareness and increase education and help all of us, deliver hope to each other, which is so important in today's craziness. So really, really pleased to be a part of the Lumate family today.
Thank you. We're really appreciative of you being here. And you and I and Sarah have spoken a couple of times over the course of like the last 7-8 months, which helped to pull this together. We knew that we're on a very similar mission. And the mission is that we want to help empower parents, especially, to recognize when their teen is struggling, but the signs aren't very clear. Right. And also through what we're doing to give to young people. And with Lumate, we're specifically focusing on adolescents and young adults, and to give them some skills and tools that might not, again, be top of mind for them, while at the same time breaking down these barriers of shame and stigma that get in the way of asking for help and seeking it when you need it. So this is where we're at. So Sarah, do you want to lead us through a few slides?
Absolutely.
So maybe, I guess I should take this one. So the Will to Live Foundation was formed exactly 13 years ago this week. On October 15th in 2010, my very happy and lovely and successful family lost our oldest child, Will, to mental illness. He was big and strong and healthy and popular. He was a great athlete. He was a great student. He was a very accomplished musician. He was in a band. He wrote songs. He was the leader of his friends. He had an army of them. But he suffered from an illness that his father was unaware of. He suffered from an illness that he didn't even know existed. And as a result of not being aware, and as a result of not being educated, we didn't create a culture in my home where it was okay to not be okay. And as a result, we lost our son because he was not okay. But his very happy, glass half full, positive, focused father was always telling him how great it was and always telling him how great it is. And it kills me today that not once did I ever say to my son, wow, this is really hard. This sucks. I didn't have to do this. I didn't have to get straight A's to go to Northwestern University, let alone the University of Georgia. I didn't have to make a travel team when I was 10 in order to play a high school sport. And I certainly didn't have this. I didn't have social media. I didn't have the Internet of Things. When I made a mistake, my friends, only my closest friends knew about it. When I fumbled, it wasn't on YouTube. It wasn't on the Internet. When my girlfriend broke up with me, which she regrets,
I'm sure.
nobody posted it. It wasn't on Facebook. It wasn't on Instagram. All of these things were happening to Will every single day. But his father, who was looking at his life through his 50-year-old eyes, as opposed to looking through my son's life through Will's eyes, made me very unaware of the challenges that these kids face today. And we immediately said, literally the day he died, that we are going to do something about this because none of his friends knew Will was struggling. He never told anyone. Why didn't he talk about it? How could his hands-on loving father and mother and brothers and sisters not know anything about the pain he was suffering? Well, we were uneducated about depression. We were uneducated that it's very, very common, and 1 in 5 of everybody on this call suffers from it or some form of it. And it's okay. It's treatable and it's beatable. But if you don't talk about it, no one knows you have it. And it is what I didn't know about depression, and this is, you're listening to a dad here, was that it's an illness. It's not a character flaw. It's not a choice. It's an illness, a physical illness. And an illness that doesn't get treated can lead to a tragedy. And that's exactly what happened with Will. He was embarrassed to talk about the fact that he, being so successful and the consultant of his friends, was not okay, was struggling. And I live with that every day. But we formed this foundation, my wife and I and Will's friends, to create a culture where we do talk about it, where it is okay to not be okay. And this foundation was dedicated to work for the kids and through the kids and by the kids, because who's the easiest person to talk to when you're a 15-year-old or a high school student or a college student? It's not your mom. Sorry, moms, it's not you. It's not your dad. Sorry, dads, it's not you. It's their friends. They're the ones that understand what they're going through the most. As a 50-year-old man, I could not in any way, shape, or form fully grasp what a 15-year-old high school student goes through today. I can't, because when I was in high school, I didn't have this. It is a different world. And there's wonderful opportunities, but they come at a younger age. And because of this, these pressures are just something we're not prepared for, right? So now that I am a bit more aware, this foundation works with kids to say, hey, it's okay to not be okay. Let's talk about it because you have friends that are struggling. And we've had so much fun doing it. The kids grasped it. And we've raised over $2 million over these 13 years that have funded wonderful organizations like Lumate and American Suicide Prevention and counseling centers to help educate dads like me and moms like my wife and kids like Will that depression is real and it's here and it's okay. So let's talk about it and let's create a culture amongst our friends and our life teammates that enables them to feel comfortable talking about it. When I gave the eulogy at Will's funeral, I'm standing up there in a church speaking to 1,500 people, and I started to pick out my high school friends from Barrington, Illinois. And here I am down in Atlanta giving a eulogy at my son's funeral. Over 30 of my high school and college friends, my teenage friends, traveled all over the country to be with me on 2 days' notice. Some of these friends I hadn't seen or spoken to in 30 years. These were my life friends. These were the groomsmen in my wedding. These were the godfathers and godmothers to our kids. These were people that I learned about life with. I shared my first with, my life friends. So we called them life teammates. Who are your life teammates? And do they know that? Because if they do know that, maybe they would create this culture where it's easier to talk about it. Will had so many friends, so many, and they were devastated. But they too were uneducated and unaware. But as a part of this foundation's mission, and what we're trying to even do today is to help all of us create this culture where life is really hard. And sometimes you need a friend to help get you through it. So I think that's something really, really important for all of us, especially as parents. Who are your life teammates? Do they know that? Do your kids know about your life teammates? Who was in your wedding party? Why? Talk about it. When did you meet them? Because if we can get these kids to recognize today that they've met some of life's greatest friends, maybe it will be a little bit easier to say, I love you, but also say, hey, I'm struggling. So that's what the foundation is all about. And we've had so much fun working with professionals and others to help raise this awareness and increase education. And it's become my therapy, and I'll never stop doing it.
That's fantastic. I mean, that's, it really speaks to you, your wife, the family, for honoring Will and making his legacy be one of hope and change for kids. And everything you've been saying here, John, I mean, Sarah can validate this too. We have heard from so many families, the pressures on the kids. It's a different ball game than when we were growing up. It's like we were in like the minor leagues, and like it is constantly, World Series in
Yeah.
terms of what the pressures are.
Yeah.
And we did a lot of talking with kids over the years as to when they start feeling the pressures, and it's really astounding how in the last 30 years it's gone further and further back into an earlier point of life, where nowadays they're feeling pressure about college and success by 5th grade. And we
Yes.
have kids who are in middle school telling us they need to know what they're going to be when they grow up and how much they need to make in order to sustain a life. And
Yeah.
I had no idea when I was in graduate school what I needed to do, and it's really
Right.
that young. You're also so
Yeah.
right. Sorry, go ahead. Mhm.
I was going to say, yeah, and it's a much smaller world, right? So in other
Yeah,
words, getting into college, there's not enough spots. So you parents, be
yeah,
mentally prepared. Your child may not get into the school she or he or you want them to go to because there's not enough spots. But it's not the school. And I talk to these kids all the time. It's not the school. They're all good schools. It's you.
right.
Every boss I've ever had in my life did not go to a school as good as Northwestern University. But every one of those bosses deserved to be my boss. You know why? Because it's not the school.
Yeah,
It's them. And I think that's so important, and it's just so hard. It's the number one source of stress and anxiety for high school kids. Am I going to get to college? Am I going to be able to stay in state? There's money involved. There's pressures involved. There's parents and wanting to make your parents happy. And I never once thought of that. My wife went to Virginia. I went to Northwestern. And when Will was a freshman, the University of Georgia came in and said, you better take a whole bunch of AP classes and you better ace them if you want to get into Georgia,
wow.
which was totally untrue. Will's brother went to Georgia, didn't have one AP class. And I can give you hundreds of examples of kids with straight A's, all AP classes, that didn't get into Georgia because there's not enough spots. And I never once thought of that. I never once said, wow, this sucks. This is really hard, Will. I didn't have to do that. And if I would have done that just one time, he would have said, thank you, Dad. Thank you for understanding me. He still has to do it. But I was always, isn't this great? Isn't this wonderful? Isn't this great? Isn't this cool? Look at these wonderful opportunities, these wonderful fields, these wonderful travel teams, these wonderful schools and theaters, and all of these wonderful opportunities he had. This is so great, isn't it, Will? I didn't create a culture where he was comfortable in saying, no, Dad, it's awful. I want to die. That's how bad it is. And that kills me every single day. But you know what? Will's got three siblings, and now I actually think that they say, yeah, Dad kind of gets me. He's
Yeah.
annoying, but at least he understands me. And I think that's made my relationship with Will's siblings so much better. So I learned from that this showing of understanding is so key, and these kids can be the best ones to help show that. I get you.
That's so important. I mean, because the other thing we have to bear in mind is our kids don't come to us with a user's guide or an owner's manual, on how to raise them. And parents, we too are bombarded with images in the media, with our friends and colleagues who's, all they talk about is success of their kids. A big thing, we know is like there's the people won't even share who their kids' tutors are because it'll give another kid advantage. There's so much that goes on that's pressure on parents too. So we want to talk a little bit and dig
Yeah.
down because what, we've talked about is how do we help families to recognize early on, what are some of these pressures? What are kids thinking about? And then what are some of the things as parents that we can do to support them along the way? And so, just for those of you out there, I've been in the field too long, since 1990, really. And one of the things that I've studied over the years, and my colleagues have studied, is what do kids worry about? What are the pressures? John has
Yeah.
spoken a lot about depression, and just to know that anxiety, fears, and worries really start very young, and these are the things that lead to depression in adolescence. And for like 100 years, the things that kids worried about were they doing well enough in school? Not perfect, but well enough. I could show you my transcripts loaded with every letter in the alphabet. We didn't worry school and grades the way they do now. So, were they doing well enough? Can they give talks in front of the class or be baseball players where they strike out and they don't have to feel like they've just ended it for their entire team? They worry about their relationships with friends. They used to worry about their appearance. I mean, they still do worry about these things, being accepted and the different peer pressures of, should they go along with the flow of things, drugs, alcohol, you name it. These we know are typical, and especially the increasing independence that comes with responsibility as they're aging into adolescence and young adulthood, learning how to drive, going out and coming home when they're supposed to, all kinds of things, taking responsibility for their own homework and handing things in and seeking out internships or college. This is what kids worried about. The top of mind worries up until probably around the late 1990s. Now we have a new curveball that's been thrown at kids. In recent surveys of what kids worry about, the top worries for our kids nationally in the US and across the board around the world are things like climate change because they worry, will there be an environment for us to live in 10, 20, 30, 40 years from now? They worry, as John was saying, about what the heck's going to be posted about them and spread virally that for them could destroy their life. And for some of, and it's really hard stuff that some people get posted about. They also, and this was one we have never seen before in any surveys, they worry whether war is going to happen here, war around the world, and what it does to other people. They're concerned about violence, not just school shootings, but boy, and boy, that is there. That's a big one, but also violence in all levels and all ways, including bullying and harassment of their friends. So there's a lot that's going on here. These are worries that we never saw. We never saw these. And they worried then a lot about their future. And with the future, it's about their success, but success in the sense of can I give to my kids what my parents gave to me and their parents before them? I don't think I can with the way things are. When I tell you that we're hearing this from young kids, it's quite heartbreaking as a therapist, I will say, to hear this time and time again from kids who, again, are in late elementary and in middle school. So what do we do? What is this about? Why are our kids worrying so much, and how do you deal with this? Well, again, they're confronted all day, every day with social media and various things in the media. But also, let's just bear in mind, look, if we look back, our parents and grandparents dealt with World War II, a Great Depression, various things, changes in the way the world worked, with the sexual revolution and all kinds of things, technology coming on board and so forth. So every generation goes through change. We do know that. But how do you deal with these changes and forces that are out of your control? The first thing we have to help our kids and help ourselves understand is that as human beings, we need to experience anxiety. It is actually our inborn alarms. It's hardwired in our nervous system. And the thing about it is, when it works for us well, it protects us. So when you're starting to feel anxious about something, you've got to ask yourself, what am I worried about? Crossing the street, I look both ways to make sure I'm not getting run over by a car coming at me. And sitting at home and I'm watching TV, but wait, do I need to get my homework done because it needs to be turned in? That's a worry that should prompt me to, okay, put some time and get it done. When anxiety works for you, you are focused, you're productive, you're learning how to deal with something that's a challenge. And John, how many times did you get up at bat and you were told by your coach, watch out this guy, he's a change-up pitcher or whatever the heck they tell you, his fastball is this or that, and you have to adjust. Every season you had to adjust to new pitchers. Am I right or wrong?
You're right, except that I was a pitcher, so I didn't get to
Oh
bat
my
very
gosh,
much.
so you were the guy who didn't. So you had to adjust to the batters. Look at that. I didn't do my
Exactly. Don't throw him a curveball, right?
there you go, and this is the thing, you have anxiety and you have some stress that you're experiencing in these novel situations, but just enough. We want you to be in the zone. Too much anxiety and you are throwing that, fastball to that guy who can hit him out of the park. Too little, you don't even care, you don't think about it, and you're lobbing him something that just goes way off. So the point being, we have to help our kids find their zone, but also when they're out of the zone, it's okay. It's not a crisis and a catastrophe if you get too anxious at times. Sarah, next slide. And actually,
And
Sarah, you can anybody can like weigh in anytime. John, what are you going to
yeah,
say?
I was just going to say, yeah, that slide is really interesting, and I think something to really think about here is that they're not alone in this, and I think that's really, really important, right? There are so many others. Um, the problems that exist in the left hand side of the student body is the same problems that exist on the right hand side, but sometimes they just don't feel it. Because they see the positive likes on their friends' Instagram and things like that. But we all have a story. And I think that's what's really interesting here. We all have a story. So as parents, it's very hard, very, very hard for us to see our kids not okay. And we have to fix it by dinner. We have to fix it before they go to bed, because that's what good dads and good moms do. And I wish once I just would have not had the answer for Will. I just wish once I would have said, wow, I don't know. That's really hard, right? And I think that's just so important for us to understand that these kids are one of millions. They're not one in a million.
Well,
In
and
this
you
I
hit
can
on
situation.
speak to
something.
this.
You hit on a big thing here, if I could just say, John, when we watch our kids struggling, it puts us out of the normal zone of anxiety, and our anxiety about our kids' struggles get exactly what you're saying. It gets us into rescue, save, clear the path, fix it mode,
Yeah.
which sometimes then, depending on how you're doing and what the situation is, it then doesn't allow the youth to struggle a little and actually come to you and say, how can I deal with this? Because this is the thing. Every day, kids are going through situations that test their skills, their problem solving skills, their ability to, assert themselves and talk to a teacher or tell a kid who's bothering them to back off. If we interfere and rescue them from all kinds of everyday things, then they don't learn how to struggle and figure out how to manage those situations themselves. So we have to manage our anxiety, being calm, loving, listening to what they're talking about, and then help guide them, not give them the answers, but help guide them to what they can practice and learn to do to figure out how to manage it for themselves, because that builds their self efficacy, their confidence in themselves. Sarah, I'm sorry I cut you off.
No, no, no. This is your talk. But I was just, John, I told you the other day that I had you in my head because I heard you say, that sucks, this is hard, is sort of like actually a pretty great thing for a kid to hear sometimes. We've recently moved, totally different place, totally different world for my kids, new home, new everything. And my son was telling me about it the other day. And I go into problem solving mode, even though I'm technically no, I shouldn't, right? I still do. It's just an instinct to
Yeah.
save me from that worry. But he was telling me, he's like kind of hitting hard. And I don't get to see my friends anymore. And he'd sort of coped well prior to that. And I just said, buddy, and I was like, do what John said, do what John said. I said, that's really hard, bud. I'm so glad you told me. And he got out of the car. He's like, all right, thanks, mom. I was like,
But it's so, Sarah, I love that, because one of my favorite stories to tell when I am talking to kids, remember I told you that, when Debbie Feeker broke up with me when I was 15 and I was heartbroken, right? And no one knew about it because we didn't have Instagram. When Will's girlfriend broke up with him, I was there, and I wiped a tear from his eye. And this is 6 weeks before he died. His first love broke up with him. And I told him about Debbie, and I told him about, I had other girlfriends and this and that. And I was like, you're going to be fine, Will. You're a big, strong, handsome guy. Like, look at your mom. She's hot. I turned out great. And I made him smile, and I made him laugh, and I hugged him, and I told him I loved him. And I really thought I was getting Father of the Year award for that performance. And I walked away saying, you're going to be fine. And he probably said to himself, I'm not fine. I'm nowhere near fine. You have no idea what's going on with me. And after Will died, about a year later, his brother Tommy's girlfriend and he were breaking up. And I wanted to do the same. I wanted to tell him about what happened to me, and I turned out fine. Everything's going to be great. You're going to be fine. You're going to be fine, because I can't stand to see my kids not okay. And my wife said, John, she had a little intervention, and she was like, John, practice what you preach. Yeah. And I said, wow, Tommy, that sucks. Yeah. Sorry, man. I'm 50. I don't know anything about young love. You got a buddy you can talk to? I'm sorry, man. The next day, he texts me at 4 p.m, and he says, Dad, Chandler and I got back together. Everything's great. Thank you so much for the talk last night. I don't know. That sucks. Best piece of fathering I ever did.
Very good.
Right? It's really eye-opening. I showed him that I understood. Yeah. As opposed to always having we don't have to have the answers, even though we know the answers, right? And right. So I think that's just, my dad, and I thought about when I was playing baseball as a kid, I had a bad day, and my dad would always tell me about how he had a worse day when he was my age. And I'd be like, can I just be miserable for a day, Dad? No, you can't. Right? We don't like to see that. And I think just that showing of understanding is really what's so key here. And I think, you parents, as Anne-Marie said, there is no handbook. So who best understands what it's like to be a parent of a high school student going through all of this than another parent of a high school student going through all this? So this power of the peer-to-peer and the life teammates, it takes a village sometimes. So talk to each other. I do it all the time. Right? I'm 61 now. I've got kids in college. I'm trying to figure out retirement. Who better understands that than another 61 poor slob who's got kids going to college and trying to figure out retirement, right? And so it works at all levels and all ages, but this concept of who are your life teammates, do they know it, talk about it, share, express to each other. It's such a healing exercise.
Yeah.
And we just got a comment from a mom, Leslie, who said, I want to fix it immediately. It makes me so upset when I see my kids upset. And I think part of why that happens is because life can be hard. And then I think if we look at what is on this slide here, typical versus problematic, I think a lot of families really are trying to figure out what's typical and what's problematic. It's hard to know. And Anne-Marie, you and I know this, and John, you too. Kids, it's not like they have if they have something like acne, we see it, we can figure out how to fix it. Depression and anxiety, it's all happening internally. So the only way we can notice it is through behaviors that they're showing or is that they tell us. And if they're pretty good actors, it can be hard to know what's going on inside. Plus, there are things that happen during this phase, or I shouldn't say phase, although during this stage of life where you can be shy, you can be stressed, you can be really afraid, and that's kind of the typical piece to it. Anne Marie, I don't know if you have any anecdotes that can really outline or show just a general sense of what is shy versus social anxiety, or kind of a thought around how you help families navigate what's typical versus what's problematic.
Yeah, this slide is really important because look, shy kids are not abnormal. Let's put that right out there. And when your kid doesn't want to necessarily hang out when the cousins come over, it's not abnormal. None of that is. What we look for, is whether your youth is engaging in a healthy way with their life. Are they doing the things that bring them some happiness and joy? And it could be playing their guitar alone in their room. Are they able to communicate with other kids? And do they have one or two friends that they will do things with? And that doesn't have to be every weekend, but is there someone who's like in their bullpen that they can go to? Are they able to handle the stressors that come along without completely melting down and saying, "I'm not going to school anymore. I can't handle," and it's everything's a crisis and a catastrophe. So we tend to look at the intensity of their emotion. And if the emotion of anxiety, moodiness, irritability is too much given the situation, that's a worrisome thing. Whether it continues, we know kids will go through phases. Each new school year brings an adaptation or changes in things, test time, or as they start dating, as John's saying, and all, they're going to go through things. Well, do they not adapt to and deal with disappointments within a reasonable period of time that they move on? Or do these things stick? And then the big thing is, does it interfere with their functioning, with their role of being a student, a sibling, a friend? Are they pulling back from these things and saying, I don't want to? One of the big things I hear, I don't want to go to things at, high school parties because everybody's on drugs. I'm like, you're in a school of 5,000 people and they're all drug addicts? Oh my gosh, come on. It doesn't work that way. But that is their anxiety or depression talking and saying, I just don't want to deal. So, John, I bring this back to this is how we look at, the things that kids do. They're going to test you with limits, staying out a little later, coming home with alcohol in their breath at times. They're going to test you with these things. Is it self-medicating? Is it versus just some experimenting and, learning about things? Can you have open conversations with them? And what John says, really, what he's telling us all to do is you got to start first by just listening, not putting in what you've done, not what it was like in the
Right.
1980s, 70s, 50s. Just
Right.
listen and say, tell me more. It sounds like that's a tough situation. Tell me more about that. I can see you're upset or I can see you're unsure. Let let me learn more about it. And a big thing with that is not judging them. Like, "Oh my gosh, that's terrible," or "Why did you do that?" No, we got to say we just have to welcome them in to our arms if need be, if they're crying over something, welcome them in and say, "Tell me more about that. I'm so sorry to hear you're struggling. Let me listen." And once they see they can trust us to put things on our plate, "Mom, I got too drunk last night." Or, "I wasn't invited to 3 different things now, and I just don't wanna be around those kids anymore." Once they can say things that you can say, "I hear how that hurts you," or "I hear how worried you are," without telling them what to do or how it was for you, then they start giving you more. And that's when we want to, monitor, as this slide is showing, our natural instincts to just jump in and not assume that if you work with them and listen to them and they say, well, I want to go to this other group, or I want to do it this way, or not assume that what they want to do is going to cause more angst or failure, but to say, that sounds like a plan. Are there other things you might think of too? How do you think things would go? Let's think about what might work well and what might not, just in case, because if it doesn't, we'll be here to figure out what to do next. You want them to feel they can come back to you again and again, and they can mess up and it's all right. Does that make sense to you, John?
It does, and I just want to say it's really hard.
Yep.
right? What Anne-Marie's asking us to do is very, very difficult to do, right? Because you still do need to discipline. You still do need to guide them in certain ways. And I think maybe the best way to maybe think of it is a trusted adult, which we need to be in our kids' lives. A trusted adult knows it's hard and shows it. So show that you understand that what they're dealing with is really hard. You don't have to agree. You don't have to, but you don't have to change your discipline, things like this. But it goes a long way in that communication, that you're showing that understanding. And really what's really fun about what Anne-Marie's saying is that if you can do just a little bit of this, and if that conversation increases just a little bit more, your relationship with your kids improves. And that's a good thing.
Yep.
And that's going to improve your will to live, and it's going to improve their will to live. And I formed this foundation after my son's suicide death. But my goal is not to reduce suicides. My goal is to improve the will to live, because we're all struggling.
Yeah.
And it affects everyone. Kids that are nowhere near suicidal are still facing these ridiculous negative obstacles day in and day out. And Marie touched on something that I love, and that is, you want to have good dinner table conversation, mom and dad? Hey, Jimmy, if there was one thing that you could do every day, if there's one thing that you would really want to do every day, what is it? And listen.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it'll be something ridiculous, and maybe it'll be, I just wish I could play my guitar every day. Okay, well, let's do it. Book it. Don't let life get in the way. What do you love to do? What am I really good at? And can I do it more often? What I'm doing right now, I'm good at. I'm a good public speaker. I'm a good people person. But when I'm at my work and I'm sitting behind a desk looking at a spreadsheet, which, okay, I'm okay at it, but I don't love it. But when I'm talking to people and building relationship, that's my unique ability. That's my core competence, what I'm good at, what I love to do. And it puts me in this positive passion. And I think life, especially in our kids' world, and you saw it by those 15 worries that they have that we didn't even think about when we were in high school. They are just, their day is dominated by negativity. If they like to read, find time to read. If you'd like to play the piano, find time. If you'd like to play catch, if you like, whatever it might be, if there's a way to get that into your daily routine, it just gives them sort of me time. And I think that's a nice way for us to kind of help them. So how do we get you into your me time? What are we going to do? I haven't heard you play the guitar in 2 weeks. What's up with that? I thought you loved it, right? And you can have some fun with it. And by the way, it's a much better question than how was your day?
Yeah,
They don't want to tell you how their day was. The day sucked. They were in school.
You're getting right at what Heidi is saying in, affirming the kids that it's okay not to be okay, but also what coping strategies. And you're showing one right there. The coping strategy that of a parent saying, instead of saying, how was school today? To say, what do you think you want to keep doing that you've been doing and you enjoy? Like, what the heck is that? Why is my mother asking me that? And the big thing here, when we think about how we best can help our kids too, what you see on this slide are the key skills that all of us, but kids especially, need to learn. How to self-soothe. You are not there when they're getting dumped by a girlfriend or boyfriend. You are not there when they are embarrassed in class because they're called on and they don't have the answer. You are not there when they're at a party and somebody is pushing them and making them embarrassed in some way. They need to learn in the moment how to soothe themselves. And we can teach them that by showing that we take care of ourselves and do this too. So when you are stressed with work or something goes wrong at the house, you could go, this thing is going to overwhelm me, but wait a minute, let me breathe. You know what? I will deal with the fact that tree just fell on the garage later. First, I'm just going to sit, and I'm going to sit here and just sit with you guys and have a moment to gather myself. That is showing them how to cope. And then you talk about how you're going to make the plan to call your contractor or whatever the heck you need to do. This teaches them self-soothing, some regulating of their emotions. We don't have to jump to DEFCON 4 immediately. We can figure things out and make a plan. And then the other thing too is one of the other big things, and this is especially because of these phones and stuff, We have to teach them delay of gratification. You know, and we do that again by modeling. We show them that, you know what, we would really like to go to a certain place for vacation. We're going to save for it and build up to save for it over the next year. In the meantime, let's all go camping this summer, or something. You got to show them that you plan, and you can't have everything in the moment, but you don't tell them these things. These are not things you throw at them like through words. You give them in through your behaviors in the way you are speaking about managing for yourself. And another thing that our kids need besides the self-soothing, learning how to delay gratification, which is hard when you're waiting for college admissions and things like that, but also it's harder for them, but regulating their sleep, their diet, exercise, things like that. So when you can put things in a family context, doing things as a family, even once a week for a bike ride at the park or taking a walk or something, things like that. Everybody putting the gosh darn phones into a basket that stays in the kitchen at night, is not in the bedrooms. These are the things that also help to show them that you're in it with them for learning how to manage to get good night's sleep and things that will be improving your overall health. Sarah, can we see what's I want to get away from the slides and just talk to John actually. But you know, because parents and also teachers, other caregivers, all they like what we always say about what are the do's and don'ts. And the main thing, is the sense of calm. We use what we call labeled praise. I like that you were able to handle that situation with the teacher. And I know you didn't get what you wanted out of it, but boy, am I proud of you for going to her and telling her what you thought was wrong with the grading. That is labeling the praise of them taking the assertion, doing it on their own. And I'm really proud of you. When you link it to actual behaviors and things they're doing, it helps to underscore you were an agent for yourself of change and coping. You really did a great job in that. And that's different from us saying, you're a great kid, you're the best, that doesn't really get at what are the things that they're doing that give them agency in their life. So we want to watch some of that stuff. All right. Sarah, do you want, what am I missing? I don't want to just sit on slides. I want to hear John talk.
Well, I think remembering that this is really hard, and it doesn't happen overnight. So I've been, as an old baseball player, I use baseball analogies, and I really appreciate Anne-Marie doing the same tonight. And look for singles, because home runs just don't happen very often. And in this crazy world that's dominated by negativity, you watch the news and it's literally 30 straight minutes of crap, nothing positive at all. And their lives are kind of like that. Why didn't you? You must do. They're constantly being beat up everywhere they go. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of little things that happen, and I think you guys may be in situations where your kids are fine. You may be in situations where your kids are not fine. Maybe they are talking to you. Maybe they're not talking to you at all. Little thing, a day at a time. Just by showing them that you attended this seminar, attended this webinar.
Yeah.
You went online and heard about this dad who wrote this book because his son took his life and his dad was clueless. And it made me just kind of relate. And I just, wow, I didn't realize just how hard you guys have it. That statement is a step in the right direction. They'll hear you. I promise you, they will hear it. They may tell you to bugger off and leave, but they heard it. And then you do it again the next day. And it's just this step by step of showing that you understand that this is a really messed up world that they're in. Because I was always telling Will how great it was. And it was better than the world that I was in because of these opportunities that I didn't get till I was 18. He was getting when he was 14. But because I was uneducated and unaware and didn't know anything about mental illness and this mask, depression is very, very maskable, right? So those of you who think your kids are fine, I thought Will was fine. And I'm not trying to scare you. I'm just trying to make you aware. So just say, hey, I just heard this guy, Mr. Trautwein, and his son. Wow, do you have any friends like that? Boom. That's a conversation that's kind of showing your understanding. And that's something I wish I would have done. I wish my wife says the same. And we wish we would have had maybe some of those conversations where we gave the message to our kids that we understood that life is really hard right now for a teenager. And by the way, Will died in 2010. It's a lot harder now than it was in 2010. Think of the pandemic itself, right? Think of the political situation right now. It is an absolute mess out there, and it's showing in those things that 13-year-olds worry about.
That's right.
As Anne-Marie said, it breaks our heart.
Yeah,
So
that's
day
right.
at a time, look for singles, guys. Look for those just base hits here and there, and life by 1,000 smiles rather than death by 1,000 cuts is just a nice approach to it.
I used to
I
have a
think
slide
too.
in my talks, John, and it was but it was a slide of what would Derek Jeter do? I'm a New Yorker, and it's and
So
part
it's
of
so
it,
unacceptable, but I'll
I'm
let you know.
sorry, I'm sorry, but part of it
What would
was,
Poppy do?
well, he didn't marry our friend Sandy, who we wanted him to marry. He doesn't even know her, but he didn't know she stalked him. But what would he do is, one of the things was how many times he struck out at bat compared to how many hits and home runs he got. This is the thing. If you don't take a swing, you're never going to know. Right. And so there's things like that. And then also the other thing is that when, you are up at bat, you're not thinking about, oh my gosh, I hope I don't strike out. Oh my goodness, I'm going to let the team down. What you're doing is you're looking at the situation and you are saying, okay, what is it here? What kind of a pitcher is this? Can I put it in the left field? You're not looking and saying, I've got to hit a grand slam. You're looking at things objectively for what's realistic, and you go for that. And if you strike out, you'll get another chance at bat. That's the way we want our kids to be thinking.
These little things can really add up. Sorry, Sarah.
No, I didn't want to interrupt again, which I just really love to do. But I'm looking at, one thing you've already started to speak to. I don't know if you saw the question pop up, but a parent was saying, how do you start this if you feel like your teen is already closed off? And I think that a lot of people probably feel this way. So I would love to spend a little time thinking through some concrete, either some concrete tips or just a little bit of encouragement. One is that I think there could be, especially if someone's already a teen, there's probably some communication styles that have been happening for quite some time. It is never too late. Your teen is still watching you.
Yeah.
Even if they don't take your advice, they're still watching you.
Yeah.
Even if it means they're ready to critique you, they're still watching. So what are some small ways you can show that you're ready to maybe do things a little differently and meet them where they're at? It might not be that they're ready for something like a big question about their day. If they're really closed off, you can start small. You can just give them, for some kids, they really just love, they're like, hey, I was thinking about you today at this. I saw this thing and it reminded me of you and it reminded me of this memory. I was really proud. And then that's it, and just walk away. You can start really small. And I also think that, so for some kids, it can be physical touch, a lot of kind of like maybe like more hyperactive, kind of busy bodies. Sometimes it's nice to just kind of put your hand on their arm and just be like, hey, and that's enough. Mm-hmm. So you can start anywhere. Now, the other part is and I'm happy to have you add on, but if they really are going into their room and they've said to you or they've shown you, TikTok is really where I'm going for this information, ask them what they're learning. Show curiosity about what they're seeing on there. And try to your point, Anne-Marie, I wouldn't, sometimes you start to ask the question, but your goal is to get them to agree with you. You have to actually just be curious, or at least act curious, and just say, I would love to hear what you're hearing,
and not judge
what's something that's helpful.
And not
without judging it. TikTok is this or this, which I need to go and take my own advice later on that note to self. So
yeah,
well, I think
what happens if you feel like you're already closed off? Where can you get started?
Well, as I mentioned before, not having, they're probably closed off because they think you have the answer and they disagree with that answer. Okay. Whatever it might be. Right. So I just think I love the idea of being able to say that I attended a seminar because I just feel like I need to improve my own approach to life. I'm working on me right now. And I went to this thing. I was like, wow, it's really interesting. I didn't realize that. Done. Right. And then maybe there's something else I read. I saw an article. I heard about a friend, or, don't begin the friendship again. So, ask them for their opinion on you. I tell you what, at dinner, if I ask my kids how their day was, I get grunts.
Mm-hmm.
If I tell them, oh gosh, I have a tough day tomorrow, I'm going to have to fire somebody. What? What do you mean you're going to fire somebody? Why are you going to fire them? How are they going to make money? What are they going to do? I mean, all of a sudden my kids are really interested in me, right? I didn't ask them, so what homework do you have tonight? Or how did you do on the test? Or what did the coach say? Or all of these other things that they just don't want to have to deal with anymore. So it's just really difficult. And I think it's very, very, very small step, showing them that you are trying.
Yeah. I think, what you're hitting something really right on the money here. This person who's asking us, what if your child's already closed off? A lot of times what we hear, John, is that the kids are afraid to talk to their parents or tell them what's going on. One, they don't want to be judged, but the big thing is they don't want to disappoint their parents. And they feel that any struggle they may be having is showing their parents that they're flawed in some way. And so one of the things we do is when kids are really closed off, and also those who are angry all the time, pushing their parents away, is we ask, okay, let's reset by not commenting on them, but just being around them. And this could mean they're watching, some horror show on TV or whatever. Well, just sit and watch it. Don't comment on it, just be there in the same room, bring popcorn in, whatever. It starts with being next to the person or in the area of where they are, and just allowing yourself to sit, again, without comment. And you're validating there that it's okay to watch these shows, or it's okay to do TikTok, whatever, and that you're available. They might say, "What the heck are you here for?" Well, I'm just curious about what this show is. It's kind of different than what I'm used to, but it's interesting, and you just keep it light. Then if you open it up with some of the ways you're saying, I heard about this other kid, or, oh, there's something going on downtown at this weekend, or then it just opens things up that maybe they comment and they start talking. There will be times, and I think it's to this person's point too, where you might say, it's hard for us to talk. We get it. And maybe we've said things and done things that it's hard for you and us to, figure things out that'll be helpful for you. Maybe we can think about, though, someone else you can talk to. Is there someone you could talk to? Is there a mentor, a coach, or someone? Or would you want us to help you find someone who maybe could be in a better position to listen than we can right now?
You
We don't
know,
struggle and just without any kind of support.
The concept of, this is where that life teammate comes in. Do you have a friend you can talk to? Encourage that, guys. I know I might not be the easiest person to talk to. So if you're really struggling, who would you talk to? And just stop. And then if they don't answer, just say, is there a buddy? Is there an adult? Is there anybody? But you should think about that. If you're struggling and you want someone to talk to, think about who it is. You don't have to tell me, but have a plan, kind of thing. And just little things like that, is fine. Encourage them to talk, whether it's to you or somebody else. Mm-hmm. Because, guys, all of you who are chatting right now and asking these, it's really hard. It's a really difficult thing that you're trying to overcome. This is not easy. I would trade with you in a heartbeat. Mm-hmm. I would do anything to have my son not talk to me. I would do anything to have to go pick him up because he's smoked pot in school or something. I would do anything for that, right? Mm-hmm. And so just understand that you have a shot here. And what you want to do is create a culture where they give you that shot, where they do talk to you or to someone. And like I said, hour at a time, day at a time, week at a time. It takes a long time to do this because this is, especially in today's world, it is brutal. It is a very difficult thing.
And it's not second nature to us. And I think this goes to Betty, who just put in the chat, how do we deal with teen criticism? Because she feels like she's under a microscope all the time. Every little thing is judged or criticized. And I think, John, you actually said this in so many words that you say, I hear you. I'm too intrusive. Or I hear you. It bothers you that I, clap too loudly and yell at your basketball games, whatever it might be. But
Right.
I hear you. And you know what? I'm going to take that seriously and try to change. I'm, I do these things at times because I want you to know how much I love you, but I understand it's not working for you. Know that I love you, and we'll figure out what I can do differently. And then be quiet
As
because they'll be like, "Oh yeah, sure." There'll be more criticism, but as John says, you got to stay with that. And you got to this is where, we have to model, I'm hearing you, I'm validating the way this impacts you when when I'm whatever. So I'm gonna sit with that and I'm gonna make changes. And I hope this works for us.
Expression is a great uh, piece of armor, all right, or a great piece of ammunition, even as you're fighting against anxiety and stress and mental illness, expressing yourself. So maybe another option is to say, will you write me a letter? Just write me a letter. You don't have the pressure of me being in the same room, talking to me and interrupting you. And it's just, write me a letter. Tell me how you feel, because I want to work on this. And just put it on the dresser sometime when you're done, and I promise you I'll read it, and I will not comment on it.
right.
Right? I mean, that again, wow,
That's
big
that's actually a therapeutic intervention that is used in
yeah.
many, yeah, residential programs and stuff. They use that as the opening of the kid putting it all in a letter to the parents, and they're working with the parents at the same time to do not react to the letter with the way it's like, yeah, you got to
Right?
sit and just sit with it,
Yeah.
and listen to what the message is. Not the little knives that are being thrown at you. Listen to what the message is, what they're
Yeah,
feeling.
I have a little acronym that I didn't make up the skill, but I tried to change the acronym because I learned it when it was called SOBER: stop, observe, breathe, expand, and react. And I thought I really gotta that can't be the one that we use. So I thought about poise, POISE. Pause, observe, inhale and exhale, take a kind of a look and see what the situation is and kind of expand your response. And the reason I'm going to say this is because with I think it was Betty who said, I feel like I'm constantly under a microscope. And even this could work for the parent who was asking about with the teen is closed off. So much of what we're dealing with, because a lot of this stuff is happening when we're also thinking about work or getting dinner on the table, and we get really reactive and we assume that the intent of our teen is to criticize. There's a difference between an intent of your teen and the impact it has on you. You know the impact it has on you. You feel criticized. And by the way, Betty, I hear you. I have a son who I guarantee it's almost like at the end of the day, he's just like, here's your grade. Once again, it was an F. It was an F for the following reasons. You did this wrong, you did this wrong, you could have done this better, right? So, and it's exhausting, especially when you're like trying your damn hardest. Um, but I don't know that the intent is always to criticize. It might be to express some anxiety. It might be to tell you something about the communication style that you're doing. It might be that they want to criticize their friend and they can't. So guess who takes the hit? I'm going to steal from Lisa D'Amour, who's an author of many books on adolescence, which is to say parents are the emotional garbage collectors when you have a teenager. So it's part of the deal. But when I think about poise, the reason is because oftentimes we get reactive. We notice the impact we have on us and we assume we know the intent of our kids. We might yell or feel our feelings are hurt. If you pause, right, and kind of observe what it's like for you. Okay, I'm feeling tense. My muscles are tensing. That's the O. That's kind of the observing what's going on in my body. You take that inhale and exhale, which is essentially like a purposeful breath. And what that does is it actually gets your nervous system a little bit more ready to problem solve. So don't forget that part. And then you sort of see or expand past what you assumed was going on. You just allow for there to be a bit more space in what you kind of initially thought was going on. And that helps you to effectively act on what the real situation is. Maybe instead of feeling hurt, you might just say, wow, I'm noticing a lot what's going for you, but can I ask a bit more? Like, what's going on today? Or you might decide, no, they went too far. They were name calling, right? And then you can say, no, that is not okay, but I'm happy to hear other types of feedback, but you need to say it appropriately. The point is, there's not going to be a right or wrong way to do it, but I think it's a matter of just kind of taking some space, which a letter allows you to do, because you can read it and get really pissed or really hurt, or you can talk about it and gripe with your, mom chat group or dad chat group or whatever it is. But you can do all that without interacting with the person who's causing those emotions. So
yeah,
difficult conversations are difficult.
yeah,
Right. So if you can find a way to have that difficult conversation, whether it's, I get this call all the time when a tragedy happens and someone says, oh, will you talk to my friend? He just lost his daughter. And I'm like, I'm happy to, but he doesn't want to talk to me right now. So have him read my book, because it's like talking to me without having to talk to me. Right. Difficult conversations are hard. And so this concept of finding other ways to express are always interesting. Write a poem, write a song, play music, paint something, draw something. All of these things get them to express in some way. And I think the one thing I do want to just try to emphasize too is, don't underestimate the power that friends have in helping us as parents. Bring, next time your kids are together with two or other, bring this conversation up. Hey, I attended this webinar and they're talking about 1 in 5 of the people I know are suffering from anxiety. Do you guys feel that? And then there's 2 people, and you're a little stronger when there's 2 people or 3 people. And all of a sudden this kind of happens a little bit. And, it encourages this peer-to-peer chat, because, Will didn't do it. And he had the best of friends. The day he died, I had 12 different kids. 12. Hi, Mr. Trautwein. My name's Jim. I was Will's best friend. 12 different kids said that to me. I met 3 of them. Right? He had all of these wonderful friends, and none of them knew, because he didn't talk to them. He didn't know to. He didn't, he was afraid to, right? So I think, asking your friends, hey, if you were going to get married this weekend, who would be in your wedding? It's a great conversation. Mm-hmm. And they might just name 3 or 4 people and say, do they know that? Because that would be a good thing to tell them, right? And then all of a sudden, that kind of positive conversation takes place. You're not talking about them. You're not talking about you. They're talking about, and maybe they'll start to realize that I do have a couple people in my life other than mom and dad that I can go to and I can talk to, and, because we're a little stronger together, kind of thing. And I'm just, guys, I'm not a psychologist or psychiatrist. I'm just a dad who's been thrust into this world of teenagers through this foundation, and I'm so impressed with them. Mm-hmm. Overall, I'm so impressed with how they navigate through this craziness that I didn't have to deal with when I was their age. And so I think I'm hoping you guys can walk away from here with some tidbits, right? Just little things that to try to help improve that relationship, which is just a great step. And I think they will recognize it. It might take them a month, it might take them a year, but they will recognize it, because, as Sarah said, they do hear you. They are listening. They are observing. They are watching, right? Your actions were so loud, I couldn't hear what you were saying is a great one, right? And those are really key things.
John, I can't thank you enough.
I get passionate about this.
I can tell.
Yeah, but this is like this is the thing. You're reaching out to these parents, parent to parent. And one of the best things is when we do parent groups and we have the parents in to show one another support. You're not alone. And there's those of us therapists are out there, but really the parent to parent wisdom and support is so important. Thank you so much, John. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. I'm honored to be a part of it. I love what you guys are doing. I think this is a great conversation.
This isn't a one-time thing for you, let me tell you.
Yeah, no. Well, I'm also, all of you in attendance, I would not have attended this before Will died. I would have said, oh, that's great. But I don't need to. My kids are great. We're the Trautweins. We're fine. But I was uneducated and unaware. So kudos to you guys to realize that it takes a village, and you need to to hear these kind of things, because I wish I would have gone to something like this 13 years ago. I really, truly do. I think Will might still be alive. That's how important this concept of being aware is.
Yeah.
I was going to say, we are able to go till 1. So if people want to start having and putting in more questions, we certainly will. We won't just sit here and wait, if birds are chirping, but we would love to have the chance for you to ask some specific questions if you need to. For instance, we do have one from Ayana that I'll get into in 1 second that I think is a good one, and maybe for John to answer. I'd be curious to hear what you said, which is, if they're opposed to therapy but need it, what do you say? But let me just quickly mention that I know that we had some slides we went through quickly. There are some do and don'ts on there. I'm happy to write out what POISE is in case you need to remember the acronym. And we're going to be sending anyone who registered the PDF document so that you can have those to go back to. So I don't want anyone to worry about screenshotting. And I could have mentioned at the beginning. So don't worry, you'll get all that information. But we do want to make sure that you have the time to ask your questions. So I think 2 things that have come up that I'd love to address. One is, when we go and talk a lot about starting these conversations, which we know will benefit the teen, of course, but that sometimes the things that benefit our kids the most are really the most draining for us. John, you said it many times. This is hard. What are ways for parents to recoup? Because you can do something perfectly or textbook as a parent, and at the end of the day, you're like, "Where's my glass of wine?" Glug glug, because you're so drained from it. So, what are ways you found that you can recoup, John?
Me time.
Yeah.
I like to play the piano. I do it. I go for a walk. I get exercise. I clear my head. I pray. Whatever it might be, right? And I think it's very, very hard understanding that it is very, very common. You're not alone in this, right? And when your kid is 30, you're going to laugh about this week. That's a fact, right? And I think that's it's so hard for us, because we want to fix it today, and it's just so difficult. It's very, very hard. That's where a life teammate comes in, right?
Well, I'll tell you, when your kid is 30,
Write yourself a letter.
You're going to be babysitting for the grandkids. I can vouch for that.
Right.
And actually learning from the kids is that you need self-care. And again, as you're both saying, Jen, you go to music. One of the things that's hard for parents when their kids are struggling or they see their struggle is to make time for yourself. And so, as Betty says, it's very draining, and others, they feel like constantly, if you're not constantly under criticism, you're constantly worrying about what to do for your kid. You, again, have to find the time. If you are in a relationship, if you have a partner, you've got to find time that's just for the 2 of you. But it's very important that each of you, or if it's just you alone, find the time for you to get away and engage in something joyful or relaxing and soothing for yourself, and put away the guilt that you go to your book club or you go play tennis or you just take a walk to the park, each week or a couple of times a week for a half hour. It's important that you do that so you do have the resources within to manage when the going is getting rough, and also just to be available without being distracted by exhaustion. And this is when we put up that slide, and you'll get the handouts, as Sarah said. Taking care of your own diet, taking care of your own, getting enough exercise, sleep, and your physical health is so critical so that you will be the best you can be for the long term for the grandkids and those who come later. Because they will. They're going to drop them off at your doorstep.
So I'll make a quick announcement because we do have it until 1:00, but some people might need to go or they're on a lunch hour. So for those of you that have asked, we will absolutely be sharing for anyone who registered. You will automatically get a link to our YouTube channel with this entire recording. So you can share it. It'll be a free resource on our YouTube channel. So if you need to go and you want to pop back in, you can. If you need to go, but you have a quick question, feel free to pose it and we will try to get to as many as we can. But we'll stay on as long as we can to get those questions answered. I will say something that helps me, because I'm sort of in the thick of it, but have that guilt because I'm like, oh, if they're my kids, and they're going to be out of the house soon. I can't spend a minute away, and then I'm exhausted by them, and I don't want to see them either ever again, never again. It's like that ambivalence you have when you're in the thick of it. It actually helps me, for what this is worth, to say, even though I feel a little guilty about going, what would I want my kid to do as a parent for themselves growing up? I'm actually teaching them how to be a parent that shows self-care too. And if I can think of it like that, I'm like, oh, I would really want my daughter May or my son Jackson to have some space for themselves down the road. And so I can show them that it's okay versus showing them to wear myself out all the time. That always really helps me. I also would love to talk a bit about the concept of validation, because this comes up a lot. And we haven't said the V word yet, but I do think a lot of people hear validation and they're just like, I'm not going to excuse that behavior. Can we just, it doesn't have to be long, Emery, but can you just tell us the difference between sort of giving that empathic response? Because this will be in the slides we give out. You say you empathize and then you encourage. And so many families, like, if I empathize with what they're going through, that's kind of agreeing with their take on it. Not automatically. So maybe a quick explanation for what the difference is.
Yeah, empathizing really is being able to just say, I see or I hear you that you are so angry that we have set a limit on you with driving, with whatever it might be. I get it that you are angry. I hear your anger. I understand you're angry. You are reflecting to them and you use their words. I hate it when you don't let me go out and you don't trust me just because somebody else, got in trouble. It's not me. I hear that. I hear that you're angry with me because I'm setting a limit and you're angry and you're saying I don't trust you. You're using their words. And it helps them to see that you actually are understanding what they're saying. And if you're not, if they'll say, that's not what I mean. I'm listening. I mean, I should just be able to go when I want to because I always come home on time. I hear that you have come home on time. You have, I know that. And I know you're angry. It validates that you're listening. You get it. You're using their words back at them. And then you can sit with them for a minute and you could say, let's breathe a little here. It sounds like you want more freedom. It sounds like that's what you want. Can I tell you what I'm worried about, that this happened or that happened, and it makes me a little anxious right now? Then it opens a conversation. You're validating for them that you get it. You're empathizing. I know this is hard when the other kids' parents are letting them go all over the place or whatever it may be that they've said to you. So you're saying that, you're empathizing, but you're also giving a moment for calming down. Then, okay, what can we do to meet up in a place that shows me you can handle more of this freedom that you want? You're encouraging them to work with you, meet you halfway somewhere, throw out some ideas on how to do whatever it is that they wanna do. And you've gotta give a little sometimes here. If they have been doing okay, if you're worried because kids got in a terrible car accident, it wasn't your kid, but you heard there's too much party and whatever it might be, you're giving them space to give you some responses of what they might do, and you think together then, "All right, we can agree to this, and let's see how it goes, let's say, for a couple weeks." That's empathizing and encouraging them to problem solve with you and meet you halfway. That makes sense to you guys?
I think it's great. I think it's great. It's a step by step.
Yeah. And just to your point, John, to kind of illustrate how simple it can be, that sucks, this is hard, is validation.
Yep.
And how
I
effective.
didn't have to do this.
Yeah.
I think that's a big one because we're always telling our stories. We're always telling how that happened to me and I turned out okay, right? But actually, I didn't have to do that. And I saw somebody talk about what if my partner is not agreeing with this concept of mental wellness or mental illness and things like that.
Right.
Well, that's kind of me 13 years ago.
Yeah.
Right. And so, I have so many people, like when I do speak and they'll have read my book, the mom will come up and say, I can't wait to give my husband your book. Right. Because I'm an old school dad, ex-professional athlete, and now I'm sympathetic to mental health. Right. And I just was uneducated and unaware. And all I have to do, and I win. I've never lost an argument. I'm like 1,002 for 1,002 against fathers because I just hold that up. You didn't have this. When you fumbled when you were 16 in high school, it wasn't on YouTube. Simple as that. Big tough guy. The whole world didn't know about it by lunch. Big tough guy. Right? Your kids wake up every day knowing that any mistake they make, everyone they've ever met in their life could know about it by dinner. That is just didn't exist when big, strong dads like me were going through high school. And it was so eye-opening to me, and I so regret, right? And I still have my rules, and I still have the discipline, but just to be able to say, wow, I did not have to do this. This is crazy. How can I help? Right? It's just, thanks, Dad. I appreciate that. As opposed to, you better don't come home with a C. Do not come home with a C. Right? Or, get your homework done. They've got 4 hours of homework and 2 hours of night left because you made them go to this. They had to go to practice and they had to go to some other thing because they have to have 27 extracurricular things to get into the University of Georgia. Right? All of this stuff we didn't have to do. Yeah. And it takes the fun out of high school, which just breaks my heart. It really breaks my heart.
Well, I wonder if we can end with a metaphor that I know you've used before, that I think speaks to Ayana's question about potential ways to get people into therapy, which of course that could be a whole nother webinar for being really honest, because there's so many different reasons people struggle with that. And obviously here at Lumate, we can help if you'd like. I also, though, think that sometimes just some easy metaphors speak louder than a bunch of convincing. I also think this could be the case too for the person saying, hey, my partner's not in it. Well, sometimes certain mental health kind of things feel mushy to people and it's not their style. John, you have a lot of really great sports metaphors. And one of the ones I really like is how when you were in the, on the field, you had a sore shoulder or whatever to have, you had physical therapy and you had medication. All right, I'll let you take it from here.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's this concept of, if you get an A in math, you can go off your meds. Right? If they had cancer, would you say that? No, this is an illness. These are mental illness. And by the way, it's treatable and beatable. It's not necessarily awful, but it is an illness. Right? So when I was playing baseball, if I had a sore shoulder, I had therapy and I had medication. It's okay. And so this concept, like I have a daughter. She was homecoming queen. She was an All-American lacrosse player. She's now a sophomore in college. She's in therapy, and I'm so proud of her. My daughter is in therapy. Isn't that great? That she was wise enough and honest enough to realize that she needed help. I'm so proud of her. Now go watch Ordinary People and watch Mary Tyler Moore when her husband said that his son was in therapy. Oh, we don't talk. My friends don't need to know that our son's in therapy. There you go. There's the stigma. Yeah. Right. It's okay, guys. It's a part of this crazy world, and it's okay. Having someone to talk to is a good thing. The hard part about the mental illness is that sometimes it takes, different therapists. Sometimes it doesn't work the first time. Sometimes there's different cocktails of medication that works and doesn't work. This is what makes this so very, very, very hard. They don't want to go to therapy. You go. You go to therapy.
Thank you.
And then the next time, say, "Hey, I'm going to therapy. Yeah. Will you come with me? I need your help." Right? And just set that example. And it's because it's hard because therapy has this stigma to it, and it's, I will say it is getting easier, guys. It is getting easier to do this. Thank Lady Gaga. Thank the gymnast. Thank the Ohio State football player. Thank the NFL and NBA players that are talking about their mental wealth and mental illness. Yeah. It's okay. It's common and it's important. So don't fear it, guys. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be hard, but don't fear it. And definitely don't be ashamed of it. And the instant you say, "Hey, we're going to keep this to ourselves," you've just showed them you're ashamed.
Yeah.
It's hard, man. I get it, right? Because now they have angry friends or mean friends or uneducated and immature friends. Oh, she's in therapy, right? It's hard. And it's hard for a guy like me. Oh, I've got a mental illness problem. Maybe they'll take me off that big account at work because this is so important and he's not stable. It's hard. This is unlike any other illness, which makes this so darn difficult. But knowing that it's so darn difficult, you approach it with a little bit more, how would I say, research, a little bit more conversation, a little bit more discussion and preparation to try to make it work.
Right. And there are people who are amazing, young, impressive advocates these days. They're coming out in droves. It's like popcorn, pop, pop, pop. They're it's more and more and more. I just love this kind of growing generation so much. So, John, I can't thank you enough. I think your next book should just be mental health sports metaphors. So keep working on that in all your free time. And we will make sure, like I said to the audience, that this gets out to you guys over and on your email, and you can feel free to share it as a free resource. We want this to get out there. I just do want to spend a little time showing you guys where you can get a little help and some resources so that you have that on hand. So if you'll just bear with me 1 second while I fumble through a screen share, that we can show you a bit more. One, click, click, click. There's some additional resources here. Obviously, John and Anne-Marie's books would be my go-to here because you're going to get able to see on the page all the things that they spoke about today. There's some apps because, there's always an app for that, and some books for teens. You'll get this in your inbox soon. There's also ways to get in touch. If you do know someone who is ready and they're really struggling with anxiety or overwhelm, please know that you can get out in touch with us, grab that QR code to take you to our website, or in your particular state, you're seeing where we are listed. If we're not there, but you still need a resource, reach out. We can try to connect you to someone locally. And with that, we will say goodbye to our excellent guests, and we can't thank you enough for your time.
Thank you guys, as we teach the kids to say, "Love you, man."
Love you, man. Have a great Friday. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.